Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'm happy to introduce you to Anatomy and Physiology, which is MA 1071. I'm going to handle this recording in a couple of different phases. I want to start by telling you that my name is Lisa Dionda, and I was a medical assistant for many years and have been in education for most of my career since then. So I'm very happy to get to introduce you to anatomy and physiology. It is one of my favorite subjects, and I hope you will feel the same way. Okay, let's do a couple of things. I would like you to pause this video just because I want you to feel the power. It's important that you really get a chance to learn and immerse yourself in this information. So to be able to pause this introductory lecture from time to time is going to be really useful to you. And I also want you to get yourself with a pad of paper and a pencil. I'm a big pencil person. I just kind of love pencils and erasers. But I want you to have these things with you. So if I say something that catches your attention or you see something and you want to make a note, I find when I'm studying that sometimes my own notes are the most effective when it comes to something that really struck me or really sunk in and made sense to me or brought a question out for me. Questions are great. Questions show you're engaged, right? So let yourself be engaged and be active. So let's pause now for a second. Pause. You can pause the recording and I'll be right here when you come back. Get yourself a pad of paper or pencil and let's rock. All right, we ready to go? Cool. Okay, I'm going to share my screen because I want to look at a couple of things with you. So I'm going to make sure that we can do that. Let's close this first off and let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Let's look first at your Moodle course. So the good news is that if you are watching this recording, you were with us in the fall, right? You started with Gurnick's medical assistant program in the fall of 2022, and you have taken at least one, if not three, front office courses. So that's good. That means you're already familiar with Moodle, how it operates, how to use your textbook, how to work with your workbook, make sure you get your homework done, et cetera, et cetera. So things are going to amp up a little bit in anatomy and physiology because you will be studying back office courses at the same time you're taking this course. So I want to just give you some reminders and help you feel as efficient as possible. So we are in medical assistant anatomy and physiology 1. And just some reminders of some things that we believe are going to best help you succeed. Okay, read your textbook, read the chapter. I think it's very easy for us to always be looking for a shortcut, right? What's the fastest way for me to get this done and get it in? But when it comes to a topic like anatomy and physiology, I think you're going to find that this is a topic you really need to swim in because you want to absorb it. You want to understand it. This is the language that you need to speak, this language that's medicine. So being very familiar with anatomy and physiology at the medical assistant level is a real key factor for you in your future as a medical assistant. Read the chapter before the lecture. You probably didn't get a chance to read chapter 5 yet in your today's medical assistant before you saw this lecture. You could pause it now and go read the chapter, or you can go ahead and go through this recording with me, and I'm going to walk you through some parts of the chapter and then read it afterwards. But don't neglect to read your chapter. It's easy to think I can skip through and just do my workbook and just, play the games and I'll do fine. Maybe that's so, but you're missing out on a real depth and breadth of experience that you've invested in. by coming to school and setting this time aside to learn. So really take advantage of this textbook and read and learn and listen, and let anatomy physiology sink in, right? So read the textbook, complete the study guide, do it early because then you can use that as review. Every question, just remember that the same publishers that made this textbook and wrote this textbook for us are the same ones that made the workbook for the study guide homework, right? And they're the same ones that created the exam questions. It's all coming from the same pool. So the better you know your chapter, the better you know your homework, the better you're going to do on the quiz. Okay? So put it all together, right? Let this really be something you swim in, like I said. Play the games. There's always a game provided. Uh, Use electronic resources. You can go into Evolve, right? Elsevier, go over to Elsevier, and you can use the resources. If you don't know what I'm talking about as far as the chapter resources, because they've got extra little games and quizzes and things you can do there, uh, ask your teacher, right? On campus, ask your teacher to help you find the today's medical assistant resources. Hopefully you're hooked into those. Anyway, because they're useful too. It's a lot of stuff. We give you a lot of stuff to do, but it all starts with reading your chapter. Having a partner or study group is also a great way, right? Create mock test questions, quiz each other on your homework. All right. So Unit 1, Chapter 5. These are some of the main diagrams that are real key to the areas that you're going to study in this chapter. But let's look at what's the required assignments that are going to be due for this first unit. You're going to need to upload your homework. There's a discussion question there, like you've been doing again in Moodle. You got to respond and then respond to somebody else's comments as well before the end of the week. And then you're going to have a quiz, a 25-point multiple choice quiz. There are some optional activities here in Moodle. Don't confuse these with what's on in Elsevier on your Evolve website. Those are different resources you can also use, right? But here's a millionaire game set to let you practice it more than once, probably 3 or more times. And then there's a PowerPoint. You can click and open and save this PowerPoint. I'm not going to go through the PowerPoint with you. And you know why? Because you can read the PowerPoint yourself and use that as another one of your study things for later. Read your chapter, do your homework, study your homework, use the PowerPoint, play the games. All of these things will prepare you for your quiz. Okay, let's leave that and go over to our textbook. So what I want to do is just kind of look at this with you, and I want to remind you of some great features if you haven't been using them. You can highlight. You're going to see some of my highlights. You can create flashcards. You can bookmark certain things for questions or for a later review. So take advantage of these great features. Also not sure if you've looked at some of this lately, but it will read aloud as well. That can help sometimes when you need to focus, when you're trying not to take a snooze in the middle of reading. A lot of us zone out after we've been reading for a little while. So you need to know yourself and notice when you're zoning out. Get up, jump around, have some cold water, whatever you got to do. But you want this to get into your brain, right? So take advantage of all this. Some other reader preference features that you can set up. Okay, let's get into anatomy and physiology. I want to tell you before we really look at this that one of the important features, well, is going to be, let's just go ahead and do it in here instead of my trying to explain it to you on the side. Okay, let's look at Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology. What is anatomy and physiology? It is the shape and the structure of the human body and its parts. Just stop there. What does that mean? You're a human. You're the human body. You're already going to have a reference for so much of what you're about to learn. That will help it sink into you, right? So the more you can listen to what it's saying and then apply it, right? It encompasses a wide range of topics. Anatomy and physiology includes the development and microscopic organization of structures and the relationship between structures and the interrelationship between structure and function. So there you go. There is gross anatomy, which is the big, large structures, and then there's microscopic. So this chapter is going to cover all of these things. It's a big chapter. They're all big chapters. Every chapter in today's medical assistant is a big chapter because they all give you important things, right? But we still need to cue in, right? We need to get ready for our quiz. So there's a principle called twice fed information. Write that down, right? You've got your pencil and your paper. Write it down. Twice fed information. What this means is you read the information and the information is coming to you. That's your first feeding. When your lecturer then goes over the material and you notice that they stop or they highlight or they spend some time on certain things, that's considered twice fed information, right? That's what I want you to learn how to cue in on, because we are going to prepare you for the quiz. But the best preparation is to read your chapter and be really familiar with it. And then when you get a lecture, you can cue in on twice fed information, right? And let your questions bubble to the surface. Okay, let's go back into the textbook. Let's look down a brief summary of history, just very brief. There used to be an entire chapter dedicated to this. So you had like 25 pages of history. They don't do that anymore. Now it's like a half of a page because we've got more important fish to fry than knowing the history at this point in our education. Okay. Anatomy and physiology and the levels of organization, right? Very interesting. So it starts at a chemical level, right? Which the chemical functions come together and create cells. The cells group together in such ways that they create tissues in your body. Tissues create organs. Organs, multiple organs work together to create a body system. And then there's the total organism or the human body, you. Okay. Organ systems. These are the systems, and I'm going to speak them once, but again, I want you to remember there is the speak feature so that you can practice listening to these things and saying them yourself. Okay? Practice speaking this language. Immerse yourself in the language of medicine, right? Integumentary system, the skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, lymphatic, digestive, respiratory, urinary, and reproductive. Those are the systems. And I hear this is asking me, yes, I want to stay in the call. All right, let's go back over to our book. So, homeostasis, what is it? How does the body maintain it? And what is the negative feedback loop that your body uses to regulate homeostasis? And then anatomic terms, positioning, directions, planes and sections of the body, body cavities, and regions. These are some of those diagrams that we were looking at very early over here, right? Here's those various ones, right? There's our regions. If I go up here, there's my cavities, body cavities. Here's directional terms. So how the body's broken into sections. Okay. Cell structure and function. We aren't going to spend a lot of time with this, right? It's not, it's important, but this is something you get into a lot deeper as you get into heavier versions of anatomy and physiology. We do want to know our basics, know some basics. When I say know basics, that means each section we look at, what's the key top couple of sentences? Are we making sure we even know what it's talking about? When something says cytoplasm, do I know what the heck cytoplasm is? Right? I don't have to do a whole lecture on cytoplasm, but do I know what it is? Okay. And cell functions. How does the body move a substance back and forth through your cells, right? Through these tissues. Tissues, membranes, body tissues, different types of tissue, right? We've got our skin, we've got connective tissue inside, we've got muscle, we've got nervous, right? Our main body tissues and our body membranes. What do our membranes do? You probably discovered what your membranes did the last time you had a good cold, right? Because your nose just ran like a river. Why? Because it was washing bacteria out of your body. Your body was taking care of you. Body membranes, their secretions, and how they take care of us. Okay. Learning objectives, not going to read through all 24 of these. You can read through them. It's good towards the end as you get closer to your quiz. Read through these, right? How many of them do you know? What are you familiar with? Guide your own study as you get closer and closer to your test. Okay, key terms. Again, I am not going to read all of these, but I do want to encourage you to, because I want you to see how anytime somebody gives you the phonetic pronunciation, they're helping you, right? Active transport, active transport, right? Anatomic, anatomic, right? Position. So these are great. And you will find that these are dark in the chapter. So they will cue you into important ideas, right? That they're trying to teach you. Okay, let's keep going. Let's move our way down through the chapter. A brief summary. Remember where I said brief is the key. I am not going to spend time on this little tiny section. I do want you to read it, and I want you to let some of these names sink in. Hippocrates, Da Vinci, Jenner, Beaumont, Nightingale, Davy. You do not need to memorize these names for your quiz, but this just starts to set up your understanding of kind of where did we come throughout the centuries. And friend, it wasn't very fast, right? Medicine's only really developed in the way that we understand it probably in the last 100 years, last 200 years, really. Then it goes on to what really was accomplished during the 20th century, right? Just a big move into technology and what technology could provide, insight into areas that we would never have been able to see before this technology. I love this quote. The human body is an awesome masterpiece. Billions of microscopic parts, each with its own identity, working together in an organized manner for the benefit of the total being. Amazing. So read through all of this. Take your time with it. Human anatomy, the study of the shape and structure. We talked about that. Physiology, the scientific study of the functions or the processes, right? Physiology. Physio, right? Ology, study of. The levels of organization. Here's our first figure. Again, go back later when you read this chapter and spend some time with us and just kind of notice what they're showing us. So they're showing us at a chemical level, right? Moving on into a cellular level, tissue level, organ level. Here's a system, central nervous system, leading to the total organism. Chemical level, cells, right? It's estimated there are about 25 trillion of those. They group together to create functions as tissues. Two or more tissue types form a complex structure known as an organ. A body system consists of several organs, and the total organism is the complexity of all of these coming together and working together. Okay. And here is a great little diagram to get you thinking about the different body systems, right? What is the main components of that system? What are the main functions of that system? Fascinating, interesting. Much of this will be very familiar to you. Some of these won't be as familiar, so highlight them. If you've never really thought about the endocrine system before, then highlight some of it. What is its function? How am I going to remember this? It regulates body chemistry and, right, make myself an extra note. So I remember to come back and think about that, right? Take advantage of these cool book features, digestive, respiratory, right? Look at wonderful, wonderful. And then you can make these bigger. You can take a look at them closer. So enjoy your textbook. Get in and really swim in it. Integumentary, your skin, hair, nails, sweat glands, and sebaceous oil glands, or oil, sebaceous oil, right? Those are the accessories. Skeletal system, the framework and the parts. Muscular, they contract, that's how you move. The nervous system, made up of very specialized, somewhat fragile cells, right, that are very protected in the way that they're created, the way they're made. Endocrine regulates all the balances of your body. Um, Reproductive, cellular activities, right? These hormones manage all of our systems. Cardiovascular, muscular, heart, blood, the vessels that carry blood. Fascinating. One of my favorite systems is the cardiovascular system. And I believe most of you should have just been studying for your certified EKG exam. So whether or not you pass that exam, the fact that you can study that much more and become that competent is going to be valuable to you. The cardiovascular system, great system. Lymphatic, right? Lymph protects us against disease, removes foreign particles. The digestive system, right? All the way from the mouth to the anus. There's a whole system that our body uses, right, to utilize fuel for our body. Respiratory system, oxygen, how it's flowed, how it's taken in, its critical function, right, in our body. Reproduction, male and female. Um, Homeostasis. So let's start with homeostasis. Homeostasis is a continual internal environment that your body creates. It has to keep you within a certain range, and it is always going to be working to keep you within that range. It goes on to talk about how the chemical content, volume, temperature, and pressure of fluid must stay the same, right? You become heat stroke, your body has been scrambling to keep you from dying once your body fluids have gone out of kink, out of regulation. The mechanisms, if unsuccessful, then cells would die. Cells would die. There's illness, there's disease. So the ultimate goal of treatment, of medical treatment, is to restore homeostasis. Excuse me, to do no harm, right? Restore homeostasis and treat. We assist with all the diagnostic equipment, with the documentation, with certain treatment, certain education, right? As well as the fact that you can run the whole front end of the business while this is happening. And it's all about restoring homeostasis. Okay, negative feedback. This is really the key one. This is usually accomplished in the human body by negative feedback, which means a certain stimulus indicates that action needs to be taken, right? So when you get cold, the homeostasis button in your body is saying, oh, she's cold. It stimulates you to shiver and all of your muscles contract, right? That's homeostasis in action, right? It was a negative feedback loop. The temperature went below where it needed, or the temperature went above where it needed to go, stimulates the sweat glands to release fluid, right? To help cool down the body. All right. Let's go down to anatomic terms. Anatomic position, the anatomic position. So anytime you hear this, anatomic position, this is what is meant in the medical language. In the field, this is anatomic position. They are standing upright, palms are forward, erect. The back is erect, right? Palms forward. Directions in the body. You will need to spend a little time with this so that it makes sense to you. And I encourage you, pull in a little brother, sister, or one of your kids, or, a nosy aunt, somebody who wants to help you. Because the more you can quiz yourself on these ideas and get this idea of you being a, full dimension being. Okay, so what does this mean? How do I know what's being talked about when I read medical notes, right? You read a lot when you were working through your EHR work, your electronic health record work, right? Documentation work. Superior, a part is above another part, or it's closer to the head. For example, my nose is superior to my mouth, right? Inferior means the part is below or further from the head. Anterior or ventral means towards the surface, right? The front surface. The heart, for instance, is anterior to my vertebrae, right? Posterior means That part is towards the back. The heart is posterior to the sternum, right? The heart lies behind the sternum. Medial means toward or near the midline of the body. Midline, right? Whoops, sorry. My mouse took a nosedive. We'll keep going. Proximal, superficial, visceral. I want to go to the diagram that shows you these things. But here's an example, right? We can see the thoracic cavity is anterior to the spinal cavity, right? And the cranial cavity is superior to the thoracic cavity. So play around with these terms as you practice them. Give yourself, look at the examples that are given, but then go on and create more examples for yourself so you could speak this. I'm going to tell you another principle. I'm going to switch off just so that we kind of focus and look at each other. Another great principle of learning when you're trying to learn something, and all of your teachers will tell you this too, but you learn by doing, right? So there's this principle called see one, do one, teach one. Huh? See one, do one, teach one. So when you're practicing things, when you're going through your chapter, remember that. Teach somebody what you're saying, or pretend there's somebody there in the room with you that you're trying to teach this to, right? And practice these things, practice these terms. It'll really give you a sense of knowledge. It really is great. Okay, what are the planes? How is the body divided into sections? There's a transverse plane, right? Divides it into top and bottom halves. There's a sagittal plane. That's a right and left side. And then there's a frontal plane that divides into a front and a back side. So your planes, transverse, sagittal, and frontal planes. And again, read, practice, consider them, think about it, speak it. Spaces within the body are called cavities, right? What cavities are there? There's the cranial cavity that holds the brain, your thoracic cavity, which holds your lungs, your dorsal cavity, which contains your central nervous system, right? It's composed of both your spine and your cranial cavity. Ventral cavity includes thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic, right? So ventral cavities are on the anterior side of the body. My dorsal cavities are all on the posterior side of my body, the dorsal side. Ventral, dorsal. Practice these things. You'll enjoy it a lot more the more you practice. Quadrant. Your abdominal cavity is divided into 4 quadrants, right? Upper, lower, right, and left. How do you know which one's right and which one's left? Which position did we just talk about? How do you know? Anatomic position. So if I'm standing in the anatomic position from the patient's point of view, right, it's left and right. Patient's left and right, right? Everything's from the patient's anatomic point of view, anatomic position point of view. Here are our regions of, right? And you can see that they go all through this tic-tac-toe, right? My epigastric, then I have a right and left hypochondriac region, my umbilical region. There's a right and left lumbar, iliac, hypogastric, right? And there you go, regions of your body. Body area terms. Again, you need to spend your time, go through these in your book, pronounce each one of these, utilize the pronunciation aids. Okay, you know what I'm thinking? Let me go back here for just a second. Body cavities. See where I've highlighted? I want you to learn the body cavities. Planes of the body. Learn your planes of the body. Directions. That's where these are highlights I put in. Anatomic position. So And what else? Negative feedback, homeostasis. So those are the twice fed, right? Or the areas that I've really highlighted because I want you to make sure you stop and learn those areas. Okay, let's just kind of plow our way through. Let's see what else is in this chapter. Here is some great learning as well, right? And these all correlate to the terms that they're teaching you. So again, you got to spend a little time with it. Okay, let's look at the cell. Spend a little time with the cell. We're not going to spend a lot of time here because I really, I don't want to waste the time I have with you to stop and read all of these lines. But you do want to read through it. You need to read through this. Think about the things that it's telling you here. What is it? What is a cell, right? How does a cell divide? Again, look through this. We're going to try to memorize every feature of this. We are going to look at a couple of these features and we are going to try to learn them a little better. But I want you to look through all of it and read through each of these as it tries to explain to you. And as you read this plasma membrane, come back up here and look. What does it mean, plasma membrane? What's the membrane of it? What's the fluid within it, right? The cytoplasm, the nuclear membrane. Where's the nuclear membrane? Come into your nuclear membrane. It's right here in the center, right? Where's my nuclear membrane? See, you can click and things are going to get clearer. And you can spend time in this. So play with this and have some fun and learn. Okay, cilia. Notice I've highlighted it. It's the membrane that encloses bundles of microtubules that extend outward. They're short and they're numerous. They move substances across the surface of a cell, the cilia. And here's the cilia right across the top. They're what move things across the top of a cell, move them through and across the cell. Cilia. Plasma membrane. It's the cell membrane. Separates the inside and the outside. The cytoplasm, the gel-like fluid, right? Your top sentence is really going to tell you what that section is. And then it's going to re-summarize it. So read through, take your time. The nucleus, I'm highlighting. What is the nucleus? This is really the control center of the cell, right? This is real key information about the cell that I want you to know. It directs the activities of the cell, right? It's large. It's a spherical portion and usually in the center or just off center of the cell. Something else interesting, DNA, right? The DNA, which is all of the proteins, the entire map, the entire building directions of a human body, right? The DNA. How do we know how much DNA? How many sets of chromosome pairs does a human body have? Well, it's 23. It's probably going to be pretty easy to memorize that, not just because I highlighted it, but because, what's the name of that thing you can do now when you want to know your cultural heritage and you want to know how people are related to you? I joined it 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, 23andMe. So I don't think we'll ever forget there's 23 pairs of chromosomes, eh? Okay. Organelles within the cell, mitochondria, right? They're elongated fluid-filled sacs in the cytoplasm. They have their own DNA. They can reproduce themselves. They are the power plant of the cell. That's what you want to know. The mitochondria is the power plant of the cell. Ribosomes, they are the function, the RNA granules that synthesize protein. Important. The Golgi apparatus are sacs located near they're the packaging and shipping plant of the cell. The lysosomes, okay, are an important feature. When cells are damaged, these enzymes destroy the debris. They destroy worn out cell parts, right? Your lysosomes are important. Cytoskeleton maintains the shape of the skull. Centrioles, right, function by aiding in the distribution of chromosomes to the new daughter cell, right, when a new one is born. Cilia, which I just highlighted earlier. Oh, wait a minute. We did the villi. Villi up at the top. Cilia are more described as little hair-like processes. I'm sorry. Cilia. We looked at. Oh, I'm moving too fast. I'll get motion sickness while we're trying to do this. Hold on. Cilia. Right. Little membrane structures. We're going to learn about a different thing that's hair-like. It's not the cilia. Oh, I didn't want to confuse you there. Okay, so we're back down to lyosomes to cilia. Each cilium has special microtubules. Right? We're going to learn more about cilia as we keep going. Flagella are much longer and have fewer cells. In contrast to cilia, they move substance across the surface of the cell. Flagella beat in a whip-like motion to move the cell itself, right? So that's actually like the little motor behind the boat of the cell. Cell functions. Movement of a substance across the cell membrane. So all the fluids that you take into your body are then shared across your body, right? You're such a high percentage of fluid. So how are substances, hormones, waters, how are all of these things moved across the cell? And there are a variety of ways. There's passive transport and there's active transport. So again, I want you to spend your time with the passive, with the active, so you've read them each and at least understand what they mean. Diffusion. We get the idea that if I drop a tablet in water, it's eventually going to dissolve and spread throughout, right, the liquid. That would be diffusion. Some examples of diffusion. When we get further into the respiratory system, we're going to look at the way carbon dioxide is diffused through the lungs. Osmosis is different. It's a movement of selective permeable things, right? So only certain cells can get through whatever the barrier is, right? So they will be pulled through, right? Pulled through. So osmosis would pull them through from A to B. Filtration. You know what a filter does, right? If I have water and I don't want to get the taste of hard water, I'm going to use a water filter maybe in my water bottle, right? So it's going to keep certain materials not to come through. Coffee makers, another great example they give in here. So again, read through each of these. Let the example kind of sink in. And then remember, some of these things are going to make a lot more sense when you get more into body systems, because this is just the introductory chapter. We're going to go from body system to body system, and you're going to hear some of these terms again as you get more familiar with what's going on. I've highlighted active transport because it differs in that it moves molecules, and ions uphill from a lower concentration to a higher area of concentration. So active transport, you want to be familiar with the difference between active and passive. Okay, so I've highlighted both of those. Endocytosis. Endo means within, right? Cytosis is absorbing, right? So phagocytosis means cell eating. So it's eating the areas that are not needed anymore in the cell. So it's eating that part of the cell. Another form of endocytosis is pinocytosis, or cell drinking, in which fluid is taken in or taken out. Okay, endocytosis. Exocytosis. You want to know endo and exo. Exo means outside, right? So activity outside of the cell. So the secretion of an enzyme from a cell, the secretions would be an example of exocytosis, right? Digestive enzymes, when they come out of the pancreas to help dissolve your food or digest your food. The secretion of milk from a breast, from a mammary gland, again, exocytosis. So the secretion from a cell. Cell division, mitosis is cell division, right? Meiosis is a special division that only happens in eggs and sperm, right? So you can read through a little bit about DNA, a little bit about abnormalities associated with DNA as it's created. Okay, we're going to move forward. Tissues and membranes. We're moving out of the cell. Now we're going to look at tissues and membranes. Again, pause whenever you need to. I'm going to stop and take a sip of water. Okay, tissues and membranes. A group of cells that have a similar function. 4 main tissue types are found in the body. So let's look at the 4 tissue types. Epithelial. It protects, it secretes, it absorbs. It has excretion, filtration, diffusion, and sensory reception. All of these things are done by epithelial tissue. Notice what I'm highlighting, right? Important information. I want you to read it slowly, and then I want you to go back and think of the key things that I'm pointing out. There's an interesting cell called a goblet cell. Look at how this thing looks, like a little blob of fat in the middle. What does it do? Goblet cells are interspersed with simple columnar cells. The goblet cells are flask or goblet shaped. They secrete mucus. Cilia may be present to move the secretion along the surface. Mucus. We will talk about mucus a little more in a couple of minutes. All right, we're going to get back to why is it secreting mucus? Yuck. Okay, different ways that cells can be grouped together, right? Stratified, columnar. I want you to read through each of these. I just want you to see the difference. Transitional epithelium. All of this is skin. Different types of skin, right? It's all the integumentary system. Then there's a different tissue called connective tissue. This is a tissue that binds structures together. And I don't want to gross you out as much as I get grossed out when I try to eat chicken, but you will notice connective tissue when you eat off of a bone. You will go through different types of tissue. And the connective tissue you will notice is kind of globby and sticky, right? Connective tissues bind together. There's different types of connective tissues. Some are collagenous, which means they're very strong, made of protein. There's elastic ones that are kind of stretchy and gooey. Macrophages are large phagocytic cells that are able to move about and clean up cellular debris. Okay. Loose connective tissue. It attaches skin to the underlying tissue and fills the space between muscles. Okay, so that's another type of tissue, loose connective tissue. A lot for you to read here, right? Adipose tissue or fat tissue is a special type of loose connective tissue, right? You're going to learn more about that, how it cushions, what it creates, right? How it interacts with hormone development. Then there's dense fibrous connective tissue, which are your ligaments and your tendons. Elastic connective tissue, vocal cords, and your ligaments that connect your vertebrae are really good examples of elastic connective tissue. So different tissue types. Okay, another tissue type, cartilage. Cartilage, interesting stuff. You've got cartilage in your nose. You can get a feel for that. Cartilage in your ears. Cartilage heals very slowly because it doesn't have a direct blood supply. An interesting fact about cartilage cells. There's a special kind of cartilage that you want to pay attention to. Hyaline cartilage. It's the most common type. It has very fine fibers. It's shiny. It's opaque in appearance. Most fetal skeletons are formed of hyaline cartilage. Interesting. Before it's replaced by bone. So interesting things to learn. Bones, right? Osseous tissue is the most rigid of all connective tissue. It's made up of cylindrical units called osteons or a Haversian system. They're all packed together, Haversian. Those are osteocytes. Haversian system. Looks a lot like a tree. If you've ever seen the rings of a tree. So it's laid down layer by layer by layer. Blood is also a connective tissue. It's the only one that has a liquid matrix, right? But it is considered a connective tissue. Red blood cells, or erythro, right? Red erythrocytes cell, leuco, white cells, thrombocytes, all right? Another connective tissue. Muscle tissue is composed of special cells that can get short or contract, right, to create movement. Now, there are specific types of muscle tissue, and you do want to learn these. You're going to see my highlight again is occurring. I don't think I had a whole lot highlighted after hyaline cartilage, but I do start highlighting again when we get to blood. Skeletal muscle tissue. Okay? Skeletal muscle is striated. It's long, it's stringy, it causes body movements, and it's under voluntary control. Okay? Take your time. Whoops. Oh, crud. Hold on, I gotta escape that. Okay. It's a feature that just starts rolling. Smooth muscle is found in body organs such as the stomach, the intestines. It cannot be stimulated to contract by conscious or voluntary effort. So it's called an involuntary muscle. And its construct is totally different. See, the construct of smooth muscle tissue. Cardiac muscle is a special type of tissue only found in the heart. They're cylindrical, they appear striated, but they're shorter, and they are involuntary, right? Cardiac muscle is involuntary. Nervous tissue is found in the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. It coordinates and controls, stimulates muscle movement. It plays a major role in emotions, memory, reasoning. Cells in the nervous tissue that generate are called neurons or nerve cells. And you will learn more about this when we get to the nervous system. You will spend more time. There's a type of a sticky material that keeps the nerves connected and supported, which is called neuroglia. Again, you'll learn more about that when you get into the nervous system. Okay, body membranes. We're going to talk about membranes, body membranes. Mucous membranes are epithelial membranes that consist of tissue. They attach it to underlying loose connective tissue. They're sometimes called mucosa, right? Mucus or mucosa. They line body cavities that open to the outside of the body, right? These include your urinary, your respiratory, and your reproductive tracts. There's a serous membrane that lines cavities that don't open directly to the outside, right? So you've got mucous membranes outside of the body, serous membranes inside of the body. Synovial membranes, these produce the fluid that lets your joints and muscles move freely, right? So that movement is possible. Synovial lubricates the cartilage and the ends of bones. And then last but not least, meninges. You can see where I'm highlighting. Meninges, the connective tissue coverings around the brain and the spinal cord are called meninges. When there's an inflammation, you've heard of meningitis. My first husband got meningitis, so I saw it happen. I saw him go from being really normal to within hours of having such a severe headache that he was just bent over and had to go to emergency room. Meningitis, an inflammation of the meninges. So there's other features in your chapter. Genetic diseases. There's a page that's just going to go over each one. Common disorder screening tests that locate it. I'm not going to stop and spend time with those right now, but I do want you to read them because it's interesting stuff. And then there's a terminology review. So you can go back and consider what you've learned through the chapter. See these things again. See what's making sense. There was one thing I wanted to make sure that we found, and I think I had trouble finding it in the lecture of the book. So I highlighted it here. Macro means large. Phage is eating or swallowing. So macrophage is a large phagocytic connective tissue cell that functions in the immune response, a macrophage. So that was a word that I wanted to really make sure we got a chance. And phagocytosis, which we did look at a few times in the lecture, right? Which means to eat, to swallow, etc. Whoops, I just did it again. Okay. And that, my friends, takes us to the end of the chapter. So I want to encourage you, as I did before, to make sure that you read your book, do your homework, uh, do those early in the week so you can use your worksheets in your study guidebook are where the quiz questions come from. So utilizing that as a study guide is really great, and it's a great way to partner with somebody else to ask each other questions and see if you get it. Pretend you're teaching each other some of the more complicated topics. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed your introduction to anatomy and physiology. And there is possibly going to be a follow-up lecture happening at the end of the week where maybe we'll review some of the complicated areas and or just see what questions have come up for you as you are learning anatomy and physiology. So again, this is Miss Deonda saying goodbye and Happy New Year, and go learn it. I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye-bye.